My name is Jeffrey St Laurent. This is the Live Tuesday call. We got a good crew on the line and some good mentoring clients, some brand new people, and some veterans to the Live Tuesday call. If you haven't made a Live Tuesday call, of course, I'd love to hear you here each and every week. But if you don't, obviously, I record all of them, and I post them in my university on my website, which is sellingcoaching.com. And so check out the university. I got a lot of great resources there. And also right on the homepage of sellingcoaching.com, I have a great resource called the Ultimate Startup Guide for New Coaches. So definitely check those out. And then lastly, I work one-on-one with my mentoring clients to really help them move their business forward as I help coaches transition to a full-time business. So if you're in a position where you feel like, you've gone along the way and you're just like, you don't know where to go, you're overwhelmed or you're frustrated and you need some of that guidance, or you don't want to get to that point, you're at starting blocks and you just like, I want that guidance now because I want to move this thing as quick as I possibly can, as quick can go in the world of entrepreneurship. I can help you with that. So no matter where you're at, just go to the sellingcoaching.com under the Work With Me page. There's actually a form at the bottom of that. Fill that out. That will come to me. I'll follow up with you. We'll create a relaxed conversation and decide what's best in terms of where we can go from there. With that being said, before I launch into the call, for those of you listening to the recording, if you start to hear lots of noise in the background, having some work done on my house. And so just bear with that. And I wanted to say that to you also because it's not the most ideal situation for me to be doing a live call and a recording that I'm publishing and having like noise in the background. And maybe there's noise, maybe they're not, maybe they're going to take a lunch break for the next hour. I don't know. But that as I thought about it today, I'm like, oh, geez, I don't know if I could do the call in my house. I'm like, wait a minute, dude, of course you can. And I want to say that before I get rolling on the topic today, because you can't have perfection in your business. You'll never have perfection in your business. And a lot of people wait so long until, I've got to get this right, and I've got to record this right, and I've got to edit this right. And especially on the topic today, which is a point as well as authoring a book, or what we're going to be talking about, there's a point where, if you're looking for the perfect book, you'll never publish it. Everyone's got a book in them. I've done so many events and I've been at different events where, I've said like, who here wants to write a book? And it's like literally everyone in the audience raises their hand, but how many people actually publish a book? And then you get, very few hands out of 100 that will go up. I've got some of my clients on the line today. They're published authors as well. I published my book back in 2009. So I've been, been an author, and it's one of the greatest things you can do for your business. But as I start off in the lines of perfection, whether it's doing a call like this, publishing a book, or anything for that matter, even just something simple like doing your first Facebook Live, doing a post on Facebook, or writing your first email to your audience, it's not going to be perfect. And you can sit there and reread it a million times. You know what? You just got to push send. You just got to hit record. You just got to go. You've got to get the book, publish it. And you know what? If there's a mistake in there probably will be. In my book, Being Fulfilled, if you always want to check that out, you can go to my website, sellingcoaching.com, right under the products page, and you'll see it there along with my 8 CD audio course, Healthy Mind, Healthy Body. But on there, when I did my book, I purposely put a spelling error in my book. It was actually on perfection, and as I talked about that in my book. And I said, so there, now there's a spelling error in my book. Because, probably there's a few other ones, but, at the end of the day, if that's all that someone receives from it, then they're not ready for the information, And yeah, I think I forget, I had another handful of spelling errors in my book, even with all the editing, and my mother was more than happy to point that out for me. I should have had her proof my book. But the point is that there's no perfection, and I want you to get out there, and I want you to move forward. But let's jump into today's topic because there's a lot of interest in this, and having done my book back in 2009, I've learned a lot from it. I've had a lot of success from it, would never have changed a thing, wouldn't go back and not do it, let's put it that way. But there are some things that I would have changed, and so what I want to share with you today is share with you some of those things so that you can do it as streamlined as possible and have the quickest, how about this, have the success without as much of the, not failures, but let's just say mistakes that could have been prevented with some experience, guiding from someone experienced that has done it before, which I didn't ask or I didn't have at that time. So with that being said, a lot of people calling in today, they're like, how do I start? Where do I begin even writing a book? And so first I want to talk about, should you write a book or not? and there are certain situations where I would not recommend you writing a book, because not everyone should write a book. And not a misconception, meaning you don't have to be a writer to write a book, or even like writing, or even like reading. Let's put it this way. I'm not a reader. I'm a listener. So I listen to things, right? So I sadly to say, but it doesn't matter necessarily, but I mean, I've probably completed literally a handful of books in my whole life, because that's not how I consume and remember information. I'm an audio person, right? So you don't have to be a reader necessarily. I certainly don't consider myself a writer at all, although I write all the time when it comes to my emails and things like that. But I wrote a book, right? So none of those things matter. All that matters is that you have a message that you want to convey. But we're talking about transitioning to a full-time coach and doing this as a full-time coaching business. I don't want you to write a book just to write a book. If it's a hobby of yours and you just want to write a book, great, go for it. But if we want to think about writing a book in terms of our business, in terms of how is this book going to help me, number one, grow my audience. I always say the number one thing and objective we do in our business is growing an audience or building an audience. And number two, how is it going to build us an audience? But then also, how are we going to monetize that? Meaning not just selling the book, but how is that going to help us get paid in terms of getting coaching clients, or getting more exposure for events that we can get paid for events, and maybe even more book sales on top of that, right? So we got to think about our book as a marketing tool. That's what it is. It's a marketing tool. It's nothing more than a 5-pound business cards. And those of you that know me and what I teach, I don't recommend you get business cards in the first place, because of where we are with smartphones, etc. You can go to my Selling Coaching University and type in business cards in the search feature, and you'll see a little video I did on that. Explains more of the why and how you can avoid getting those and be successful with it. But the point being is it's a 5-pound business card, right? It's an opportunity for connection. It's an opportunity for doing events, not only events that we can get paid for people buying your book, but obviously on a bigger scale, getting paid for events and getting clients from it as well. So if we want to think about it as a marketing opportunity, we've got to really go back to and say, all right, if I want to be successful with this book, meaning I actually want people to buy it and consume it and read it, I want to make it specific. So that goes into number one, I would not do a book unless you understand who you're helping with what specifically. I like to refer that as your headline. People call it a niche, if you will. But that's really what you've got to understand is who do I help with what specifically? Because now, if I know that, not only is that going to determine now where my audience is, but it's also going to determine my message to those people. And then more specifically, if we're going to be writing a book, now I know what I can be talking about in that book to those people. Because we want to be helping them with a specific need. And that's where, when we have a specific need, what happens is that brings value, right? When they have a specific need that we're helping them with, that makes what we're offering to them of value. And in this case, let's call it a $20, $25 book or whatever it's going to be. It's going to provide value because we're talking about to them, and we're talking about something specific we can help them with. And so those are some things that we want to start thinking about is, well, who do I help with what specifically? And then how is this book going to help them? And that's an important point. So now, as we get into this, should I write a book? If I know my audience and I can help them with something specifically, where does this book come in? Because remember, if we're writing a book, don't do it for the money. Meaning, don't write a book because, oh my God, me selling this book is going to make me lots of money. In other words, it's going to become a bestseller. Some people were asking earlier, like, how do I get it on the bestseller list? Well, I don't know, because my book wasn't a bestseller. I didn't write it to be a bestseller, though if it became one, I wasn't opposed to it. But what I did learn from my mentor and other people that I spoke with that even were bestsellers, I mentored with Mark Victor Hansen, author of Chicken Soup for the Soul, did some speaking engagements with him. I handed him my book and he looked at it and he told me all the things I should have done differently, but learned some good things from those people. And the thing about it is that, what I learned is like, don't write a book to try and be a bestseller, because anyone who wrote a book to try and be a bestseller probably didn't become one, right? So, or they are already one and they went from there. But the point is you want to write a book because it's going to help get your message out there. But think about it from this perspective is, if we're writing a book, do it to convey your message so you can get in front of more people. And then, yes, if I can do a speaking engagement and I'm speaking, call it 10 people, on a Saturday afternoon for free, it's like, yeah, you know what? If half those people buy a $20 book, I can walk out of there with $100. Great. Make a little profit and move on from there. Maybe get some potential clients out of it, right? So don't write it from the side of, I want this to become a bestseller. I'm not trying to, dumb down your goals here, but right from the perspective of getting it out there. Before you even think about that, I want you to think rather of, what type of business model am I doing? In other words, how am I going to get in front of people? More virtually or online, or more offline? I know some of you are, maybe I'm going to do a hybrid version of each. But what I want to say is that if you're going to be 100% online, like right now with my business selling coaches, as I help coaches transition to a full-time business, I'm 100% online, right? Me having a physical book that I've written does not serve me as well as when I did my business and I was 100% offline, meaning speaking engagements. And the reason being is because if someone buys a book, right? So for instance, let's just say you went to my website under the products and you bought my Being Fulfilled book, right? I've got to ship it to you, right? So not only do I have to, I could have it fulfilled, and I've had my books fulfilled before, but that's just eating more into the cost of doing it. And the fact is, you're not going to be having the books fly off the shelf. So the best case and the most economical way to do it is to fulfill them yourself and have the copies in your home or in a shed or in a place where they're not going to get ruined, as opposed to paying in a storage facility $100 a month to have your books, and then whatever, $6 per book to have them package it and ship it. After all those costs and also then the cost of the book, you're probably spending money to have someone buy your book. That's the reality of it, right? So the reason I say if you think about your business model, because if I'm doing face-to-face, great. I've got 100 books, let's say, in my basement. I've got 100 books, in my office, let's say. And I go to an event, I can take 10, 20, 30 books, depending on how many people are there. And guess what? They buy a book, they give me $20, they pay me a credit card, they write a check, I give them the book, I sign it, and I deposit it or I put it in my pocket, and it's done. And then I minus the cost of the book that it cost me to print it. Let's say, $6. If you do in lower quantities, it might cost you upwards towards, $20 a book or $15 a book, depending on who you're printing it from. I mean, these are the realities of it. That's why I'm saying don't write a book for the money that you're going to get from product sales, unless you're doing large volumes, which odds are, the reality is, we're not going to. So we got to do it from getting our message out there. But if now I'm doing it online and I'm selling a physical product and I've got to ship it, that's, to ship, call it $4 to $7, depending on how thick and heavy your book is, plus the time it takes to package and, the handling time, shipping and handling piece of it. So economically, it doesn't make much sense to have a book if you're doing it 100% virtual. And in fact, from a financial standpoint, these are just all things to consider, is that at the end of the day, thanks to Amazon, if you will, and a lot of online places, which are fantastic, but the cost of books, I mean, you could buy a book nowadays, what is it going to cost you? $7, $10 at the most? So we're selling a book for $20, $25 because we need to, right? In order not just to make a profit, but just to even sometimes cover the cost of the books. Like I said, if your book could be easily $15 to $20 if you're doing a low run of 100, books, 50, 100 books, whatever. But at the end of the day, book prices have come down so much, and therefore we want to consider those things, in this process. And that's why, if you're doing it virtually, I wouldn't necessarily consider that. And also, when you think about it, I could take the same copy, if you will, or the same script that I would turn into a book, and let's say I turn that into a workbook, and it was a 50-page workbook, and I did it virtually even, and you could even print it if you wanted to, if you're doing face-to-face workshops or whatever, face-to-face events. But let's say it was a downloadable product, and I had a PDF portion of it, and then let's say I recorded some of it, and that was a course. I could take that same thing that was the content and turn it into a book that I could sell for $20 or $25, and I could package it differently, and I could sell that for a $300 course or a $500 course, depending on the length and what was involved and what was included with it, right? So from a profit standpoint, that's my whole point, is I want you to think about this. It doesn't necessarily make sense, right? So if I took the content from my book right now and turned that into a different type of a course and repackaged it, repurposed it, had an audio and or like video portion of it, I could sell that for, 10, 20 times, 10 times the cost or 15 times the cost, depending on what I'm doing. So those are things to consider there. That's why I say don't write it necessarily for the money. It's more for that exposure. So how do I even begin writing a book? Well, consider these things first. And then the next thing to consider is when it comes to writing it is going to be more along the lines of what's my goal with the book in terms of what am I going for with this? So a book obviously gives you, being an author, in other words, it gives you fantastic credibility when you say, well, hey, I'm a published author, or I just published my book, or I have my book, right? It gives you a lot of credibility. It's great, especially for the face-to-face marketing model, meaning I'm doing speaking engagements. Like earlier, one of my clients was on the line and she was saying how she's doing an event this week and the tickets are selling and it's around her book, right? And she's got sponsors for the events and we helped her with some of that stuff, getting that out there. And so it's great because now she's getting her book sold. She's getting money for the book. The sponsors are actually paying for the books, and then all the people are going to get the books. They're going to have a copy of it, right? So there's a lot of value in that. So a book is going to, especially for a face-to-face marketing model, it's going to, when you pick up the phone to call someone and you're face-to-face with somebody and you're shaking hands and you're talking about what you do, and you have your headline, I help who with what specifically, right? I help coaches transition to a full-time business. And I just published my first book called blah, blah, blah. Right? Or when you call someone up and you have the approach of saying, hey, listen, you know what? I'm in the local area. I'm a business owner. I help who with what specifically. I just published my first book, or I'm doing a book tour, or I published my book not too long ago, and I'm looking to get out there and share the message, speak the word. I want to get in front of more and more people, and I'm wondering, who might you know? I'm wondering if you might be open to having an event at your place. You've got a great location or you've got some great space, and I'm wondering if you might be open to talking about this. I've done this. I help my clients with this now. It's fantastic because you get in the door, people are excited. They're like, oh, you published a book? What's the name of it? They're like, do you have a copy? I absolutely do. I'd love to give you a signed copy. What's your name? Boom. You sign it over to them. I mean, this is gold, right? This is like the key to getting in the door, as opposed to like, how else do we approach these people, right? I mean, it's such a different place when you're coming from this, and that's why from a face-to-face marketing model, it's gold. And that's why I'm saying, when I ask the question, what do I want to do with this book? What do I want this book to get me? If the answer is like, I just want to make money from the book, well, I already showed you there's lots of other ways of, publishing some content and making money with it without having to do, a fraction of the work, just getting a downloadable product ready to go and then marketing and selling that, So this is a great avenue to go down, and you think about it from that perspective is like, now this can get my foot in the door, right? So those are some of the places, so where do I begin? How do you get your thoughts together? Get your thoughts together from this perspective, in terms of the direction you want to go with it. If you're going down the path now of like, okay, I want to do some of that face-to-face stuff. I want to, do a book, great. I've got my headline, like I said earlier, helping who with what specifically, fantastic. Now, what's my message to them? What am I helping them with specifically in this book? Some of the things that I want you to think about is everything that we do in our business, you want it to somehow build value for your premium service, which is coaching, right? And if that's the direction you're going down, and if you're mentoring with me, I don't care who you've talked to or what you've read, and yeah, we can have products and yeah, we can have things we can sell, etc. But at the end of the day, I don't care who I'm talking with, and when you're starting off, I so recommend that you start doing some one-on-one coaching. If anything, to just start to understand your audience more, and especially if you're going down the avenue of a book or any course for that matter, in that respect, I want you to understand your audience more. So even as you're moving forward with this, you can write a book right out of the gates, but I would want you to start doing your business for a little bit. Get you at least 10, 12 paying clients first. Get yourself in front of some audiences, do some speaking engagements, get your weekly emails going so you're writing some content, you're some videoing, putting some videos out there. Not only virtually, you're doing speaking engagements face-to-face, but you're also doing some virtual stuff, maybe some videos. You want to know what your message is. And the great part is this is answering some people's questions. Well, if you are going down the path of the book and you have considered some of the things that I've already told you about, what path should I go down? How do I get my thoughts together? I'd recommend doing blogging, writing your weekly emails, doing some videos, working with your clients, taking notes afterwards. What you're doing right there is you're developing your content. One of my mentoring clients I'm working with right now, I'm helping her write a book, and, we're looking as a date of releases, like maybe October or November of this year. And so one of the strategies I was using with her is I'm like, well, as you write each email, first think about this, put a framework together, right? Put a framework together of where you want to go with bullet points for the book. And as you start to write your emails and create your weekly content, just create it as if you're writing the book, right? And then you can actually start to publish it live. And then now you're going to have it, some of it written out, or even if it's videos, you have it recorded at least, and then you can start expanding upon it, and then you can put that right into your book. And that's how you can start building a book without sitting there thinking, okay, sitting at my desk at my computer, okay, where do I start? You can start doing it as you go along, but the best part about that is you're starting to understand your audience and what they need the most. Even when I started helping coaches transition to a full-time business, obviously I had done it myself. I had helped some people at that point already, but I had ideas of new things that they needed work with. But as I worked with more and more clients, as I interact with more and more people, like in my private Facebook group, online, with the emails, and obviously my clients, like I said, I really got to understand, like, whoa, of all the topics that I, let's say, knew were important, well, which ones were the most important to them? Which ones did they need the most help with? And that's where I started gravitating towards those topics and expanding upon those things more. And when I did that, I found like, wow, I'm getting better numbers. I'm getting more people hiring me. I'm getting better responses. I'm getting more people opening my emails, type of thing. So you got to understand your audience more. And because remember, if you're talking about something that's of interest to them and of value to them, then they're going to buy it, because value is associated with selling, right? If it's not valuable for them, it doesn't matter if it costs $20. It could be free. They still might not even want it, right? So those are things that, we can start working our content from and thinking about, and to help us go in a direction. Some other logistical things I want to talk about when it comes to writing a book. I would definitely go the self-publishing route. In other words, I would not try and get your book published unless you've got connections, unless you've got, a way in type of thing. And the reason is because at the end of the day, I don't want to write a script and then spend all my time trying to get it out there so people can read it and try and publish it. In other words, I want to print this. I don't want to get it out there. I want to start doing events with it ASAP. In other words, if I know I'm publishing a book and I've got a date on it, or in other words, I'm going to put a date on it. And then as soon as I get that, and as soon as I got like a title and or some description around it, I'm going to start marketing and even pre-selling the book, right? I'm going to pre-sell that book, and I'm going to start making money for it. Especially that's going to hopefully subsidize my cost of actually doing the book. So when it comes time to actually me paying, for the self-publishing thing to print the copies and stuff, if I already sold, 20, 30, 50, hopefully more copies, great. I've got that times, let's say $20. Great. Now I got some capital to put against that, as opposed to, lopping it on a credit card and going from there. So I would definitely self-publish. And in terms of specific recommendations, honestly, ask around. If I have one of my mentoring clients with some specific recommendations there, but I've had so many people go down different routes with different experiences, and just type self-publishing into Google, and you're going to find different options from there. The best thing is, what I'd recommend is find someone who's self-published a book, get a copy, and if you like how it looks, the artwork, the contents, everything like that, find out how they used, who they used, and go that direction. But, there's a million of out there that you can actually use. That's the best way to go, because everyone has different preferences in terms of that direction. Other quick recommendations would be, do low runs, meaning I would not print off 5,000 copies. And the reason is I printed off 5,000 copies. So not only between, editing and printing and artwork and a whole bunch of other stuff when I did my book back in 2008, came out in 2009, January, I invested $25,000 in it, right? So, and I had 5,000 books. So not only did I pay for warehousing and fulfillment, and the costs were ridiculous. But even with all that, I more than made the money up, X-fold from it, in terms of what I've gotten paid from clients and speaking engagements and book sales itself. But guess what's in my basement still? I've still got probably 2,000 copies left in my basement, 100 cases of books in my basement, And so I was sick of paying $100 for warehousing and things like that, so I shipped them to my house. But even after all of that, printing that many copies, I think printing out 5,000 copies, I think all in my cost per book was like, I think it was $6 a book, But since I've paid for warehousing and then shipped them to my house and things like that, my cost of books gone up to I think it's over $12 at this point, all in. So then I sell a book and I ship it, add on, let's just call it another $6. So now to sell a book to someone online, I'm at $18. So if I'm selling that book for $25, what's my profit? Not much. You can do the math, So, and then also, we never know where down the road you change who you're helping, you change your avenue, things like that. At some point, at what point do those books become obsolete in the sense that, you're not going that direction anymore? So print a lower number of books. If I were going to give you a number, I wouldn't print more than 100 to start off with. Print 50, print 75, and if you need more books, guess what? Print more books. The cost per book is going to be higher, but if you're taking my advice on this model we're talking about here and you're not doing it virtually, you're doing it face-to-face, great. You can have a little bit higher cost and at least you can make a little profit if you're selling a book at an event face-to-face. They give you $25, you give them a book, done. You're still going to make money, at least a little bit of money that way. And you're also not going to have to inventory them. You're not going to have a whole bunch of books left over. And the other advantage to that is depending on the publisher, you go through the book, you print 50 copies of it, and then you're like, oh, you want to change something, you want to add something, you're like, oh, you know what, I misspelled this, or whatever. You can make an edit, you can make a revision, and then print that. So there's lots of advantages to doing that, even though the cost is a little bit higher per book. I wouldn't recommend you to go any other way.